Super. Well, welcome. Thanks so much for joining us today. I am Gina Reganini. I'm the Director of Educational Initiatives and Alumni Relations, and I'm so excited to welcome you to this season finale, if you will, of Husky How To. We are wrapping up our spring lineup with a really fascinating and super useful topic with a fantastic speaker. A lot of superlatives, but I promise you at the end, you'll agree. I'll introduce our speaker in just a moment. But this summer, we're going to take some time and put together a fall lineup of Husky How-To sessions, and we'd love your suggestions. So please reach out to me via email with any ideas that you might have, and I'll put my email in the chat for you. So a little bit of housekeeping, then we can dive in. If you need closed captions, you can turn them on in your settings in this Zoom meeting using the button labeled Show Captions at the bottom of your screen. We'll have remarks from our speaker, followed by time for Q&A. So please feel free to add your questions to the chat at any time, and I will moderate after the presentation. As you heard, this session is being recorded and will be posted to the Alumni Relations YouTube channel afterwards. I encourage you to check out some of our other recordings as well, as there's some great content on there. And speaking of great content, I am so excited to begin today's session, The Inner Work of Teamwork, and to introduce our speaker, Colonel Mike Manning, Professor of Engineering Leadership at the Gordon Institute of Engineering Leadership at Northeastern. Colonel Mike, as he's known, joined the Gordon Institute in 2020, and before that served in a variety of leadership, command, and staff capacities with the U.S. Army, facilitated cabinet-level organizational change initiatives for the governor of the state of Rhode Island, worked as an executive recruiter with a boutique recruiting firm in Boston, as well as served as an instructor of design thinking at Roger Williams University. Colonel Mike is a graduate of Providence College and the U.S. Naval War College, holds a master's degree in national security and strategic studies, and completed a national security fellowship at the Fletcher School at Tufts University. Colonel Mike, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your expertise. Take it away.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, Gina. Really happy to be here. And we've got an intimate group here today, which is nice. And we'll get to know each other, which is and I want to encourage everybody to use their voice. And Katie and Eric, really thank you for spending some time. This is a really important topic that we're going to talk about today, actually two. So we're going to be speaking specifically about psychological safety and accountability. So if psychological safety is the front door, if you will, metaphorically speaking, the back door is accountability. Before we get started in earnest here, and I've got just a handful of slides that we'll use today to just really kind of govern our conversation, but I really want to have a conversation today. And it's an open no problem, Eric. No problem at all, brother. If you're able to contribute along the way, take yourself off of mute, that's fine. I was sharing with modeling vulnerability here. I was sharing with Gina. I have young adult children, but I have two dogs, one of whom, who's a little guy, was very, very ill last night. So it was like dealing with like a newborn. And so I'm exhausted today. So no issues with kids running around doing pull-ups in the background. Just to get us started though, what I want to do is just a quick check-in. And Gina, if we could start with you. So the check-in for today is just, I know you introduced yourself with just a moment ago, but for check-in, could you just model for us, we know your name, of course, but just one unique thing, and there are many, but one unique thing about you. And then the second question is, when you hear the word vulnerability, what's a word or a phrase that comes to mind? So one unique thing about you, and then just a reaction, don't overthink it, when you hear vulnerability.
One unique thing is I am left-handed. Go lefties.
Okay.
And when I think of vulnerability, I think of I think of trust actually, because I feel like they really do go hand in hand. To have one, you need the other. So that's my gut reaction.
Beautiful. Thank you. Katie, can we go to you, please? And maybe Katie, could you just tell us a little bit about you?
So sure, yeah, I'm also a member of the alumni relations team. I've been on the team for about 6 or 7 weeks now. So I feel like that's my unique thing right now. I don't know what else. I can't think of anything. Um, and I would say vulnerability to me, I feel like honesty is what comes to mind. The first word a little bit of intimidating, a little scary too. Um, those are the two things that I think of.
Awesome. Great. Thank you.
Okay.
And then, Eric, if we can come to you, are you able to take yourself off of mute just to do a quick check-in?
Yeah, I sure am. No problem, Mike.
Awesome. Over to you,
Yeah.
brother.
Unique thing. Let me think about that. I think um, I'm also a Gordon Institute person. I actually Gordon Institute at Tufts, though, not Gordon Institute at
Yeah.
Northeastern, but I am a Northeastern undergrad alum.
Awesome.
And as far as vulnerability, I was thinking similar lines as what Katie says about intimate relationships and vulnerability there. So similar thought process there. So.
Awesome. Awesome. Great. Yeah. Thank you. I'm a Tufts guy too, Eric. Um,
Oh, okay, great.
yeah, not the Gordon Institute, but I am a jumbo as
Fantastic.
well. Yeah. Yeah. So
Huskies
again,
and
thanks.
Jumbos go together, right?
Huskies and Jumbos. There you go. That's it. Um, so I'll bring us home. So my wife is Colombian. So we'll give her a shout out. She's listening in the backdrop here. So that's a unique thing about her, but I'm gonna claim it for today. Um, and vulnerability, when I hear vulnerability, courage comes to mind. And but we're gonna explore vulnerability in greater detail and greater depth in just a bit here. Um, okay, so as we're getting ready to jump into this, I want to posit a premise. I'm going to ask you to accept this, and it really will kind of inform our conversation today. All right. So high performing teams, high performing teams. I want you to think about a high performing team, and hopefully at this point in our lives, we've all been part of one, right? So within the institute that I represent, which is the Gordon Institute at Northeastern, the driving principle is that leadership is a team event. Okay, leadership is a team event. Now, what follows, or by way of an organizing framework, is that of a high performing team. Now, high performing teams, if you weren't aware of this, and I suspect you may be, at least to a certain extent, but high performing teams have two key tenets. The first key tenet of a high performing team is that of diversity of thought and lived experience. So, as leaders, we want to create, we want to form, we want to comprise a team of individuals that look at the world very, very differently. Okay, it's about different lived experiences, different backgrounds, different paradigms, different mental models. Okay, so we want to literally, it's a celebration of diversity of thought, lived experience. But it's not enough to stop there. You can't just build a team of people that look at the world very differently. We now need to create space, we need to create time, we need to create opportunity for them to be able to share. And that's where the second tenet comes in. That's inclusion. Okay, inclusion. Inclusion represents one of the central concepts we're going to talk about today, which is psychological safety. So if we create a psychologically safe and inclusive environment, what we're communicating to everybody on the team is that they have a platform by which to use their voice. And it doesn't matter, you might be a senior member of the team, you might be a mid-ranker, you might be a new entrant. The bottom line is that we recognize that you bring something unique and exquisite to the table. And there's a platform by which you can share. And we're going to create those conditions for you. The best teams, okay, the best high performing teams are those that not only is there a recognition by members of the team that they have an opportunity to use their voice, but there's actually a joyful obligation to do so. All right, really powerful if you can think in those terms. Let me just pause here for a minute. Lisa, thank you for joining us. Can you hear us okay?
Yes, I can.
Awesome. And Lisa, I want to invite you, if you're in a position to turn your camera on, would you feel comfortable doing that?
Yeah, I can do that. Sorry,
Okay,
I'm late.
awesome. No. It's all listen, thank you for joining here. And we were just getting started. And so without putting you on the spot, let me put you on the spot, Lisa. Okay. But we just had done a quick check-in. So do you mind just just introduce yourself? Who are you? What organization do you represent? And then there's just two other quick questions. So over to you.
Sure. So I'm Lisa Kozlowski. A college of now I don't even know what it's called now. I was a biology major. Graduated in 1991, and now work at Thomas Jefferson University in Philadelphia. I'm an associate dean for student and postdoctoral affairs in our College of Life Sciences there.
Oh, awesome. Well, listen, thank you for. Are you a Philly native, or did you grow up around here?
Grew up in Connecticut, so New England native, but now I've lived in Philadelphia. So I've been in this position for 21 years. So I've
Wow.
here now longer than I've lived anywhere else. So
Awesome. Okay, great. And last question that I want to ask, and then you joined at a great time because we're just getting started here. But when you hear the word vulnerability, what comes to mind? Word, phrase, vulnerability. What does it mean to you?
Openness.
Okay, beautiful. Great, thank you. So Lisa and everyone, I was just wrapping up kind of a scene setter here, and I had posited, Lisa, just to get you caught up very quickly. We're going to talk about these two central leadership concepts that are actually they're interlocking. One is psychological safety, which metaphorically speaking, that's the front door. The back door is accountability. You need both. Okay, you need both. Number one. Number two, when we think about psychological safety, it's really it's manifest in an inclusive environment, whether it's within a subunit within an organization. And so a way to identify if psychological safety is alive and well in a way that actually we can measure it is that everyone on the team, okay, within a subunit, for example, but within across the organization writ large, recognizes that they have value and that they have a platform by which to use their voice, because there's a recognition, and this is modeled by leadership, right? That I bring something unique to the table, as does Gina, as does Katie. And in order for us to be a high performing team and to be the best version of ourselves, everybody's got to be rowing well together, but using their voice. And if we're doing this right, if the leader has created the right environment, has created the right conditions, not only is there a recognition that I have a platform by which to share and to communicate and to contribute, but there's actually a joyful obligation to do so. So we're going to talk a little bit today about, what is psychological safety? What is accountability, right? And how do we create both? That's what this is all about today. All right, slide, please. So just a quick comment about some of the sources here, and you'll have access to these slides. I'll get with Gene afterwards if you want them. Happy to share them, and happy to jump on a call afterwards if there was anything that you wanted to learn more about. But I want to just illuminate one in particular that I think is very, very important, and that's the Project Aristotle reference there. This is, if you're not aware of this, but Project Aristotle was a project that was undertaken by Google. And what they were looking at, and this is back in 2012 is when it started, but they were looking at what makes a team a high-performing team and what makes a team successful. And so they were looking at what are some of the patterns of behavior, what are the trends that are manifest in these teams that are outperforming others across the Google enterprise. And they spent 2 years, and they looked at over 180 teams, amazingly, and they studied upwards of 250 different attributes. And what they found, surprisingly, right, or maybe not, was that psychological safety was the key differentiator among all of the different teams. So high performing teams invariably without exception, psychological safety was alive and well and present. Okay, slide, please. Here's our agenda for today. So I'm going to start with an introduction to psychological safety, and I'm going to use the iceberg model to get us started, just to ground us. We'll do a little bit of a deeper dive talking about psychological safety. What are the stages of psychological safety? What are some of the best practices related to creating psychological safety and calling it forward, manifesting it within the life of the team? And then we'll pivot to accountability, because without accountability, as you'll see here in this presentation, we can create psychological safety, right? We can create those conditions for members of a team where they feel comfortable being their authentic selves, but it could just end there. The bottom line is we need the accountability piece, because that's going to pull us forward from a space of comfort to one of learning and contribution. And that's where we need to go. So again, start with psychological safety, and then we'll end with accountability. Okay, slide, please. Okay, again, we talked a little bit about vulnerability during our check-in, but I wanted to just share with you, and not just in advance of this conversation here today, but this has been, I'm in my second vocation, everyone. So I spent 25 years, Lisa, you would have missed this, but I spent 25 years in the US Army. And I did a lot of different things in the Army. The latter half, I spent, the upwards of 10 to 15 years as a ministerial advisor. So I had the great fortune of literally traveling and living outside of the country for upwards of 12 years, and worked with a number of different partner nations, whether it was the ministries of defense or with ambassadorial staff on the US side of things. And oftentimes found myself in these environments where I was alone. I was representing, our equities, special operations equities, as a member of the special operations community. And oftentimes I had to be vulnerable. It was just a kind of a part of my daily existence. And so I was fascinated by vulnerability and really looked at vulnerability and the role of the relationship vulnerability has with courage. But vulnerability it speaks to woundedness, right? And it comes directly from the word vulnos, which means wound, and vulnerare, which is to wound. And so when we're vulnerable, we're opening ourselves up to being wounded. Vulnerability, everyone, is central to psychological safety and trust. It is the central concept for psych safety and for trust. And we're not going to get into trust in a great deal of depth here today, but I'll share with you that it's amazing that concept, vulnerability, really cuts across. And so what I would ask you to just accept by way of a second premise today is that psychological safety predicates trust. In order for trust to get laid in, psychological safety has to be in place. Slide, please. Okay, so here's the iceberg model, everyone. And if you're not familiar with this, but this is a great heuristic tool. And so bottom line is we use this. This is a design thinking heuristic that I was introduced to a number of different years ago. But the idea is that the tip of the iceberg, all you see is 15 to 20% of the iceberg. And so to really understand and appreciate what's happening, what's going on, you got to run to the base of the iceberg. Back in 1844, Soren Kierkegaard identified creativity as both a generative and a destructive force that created anxiety within people. Okay, again, this is Kierkegaard, going back, upwards of a couple centuries now at this point. So creativity, when a person was attempting to be creative and authentic, it was both generative but also destructive. Okay, in 43, Maslow identifies what he referred to as belongingness needs. Okay, his hierarchy of needs, belongingness. I need to belong was one of those pillars. okay? If physiological, per Maslow, if physiological and safety needs are met, what emerges on the part of an individual is love, affection, and this idea that I belong to something, okay? First time that the term psychological safety was ever used was in 1964 by E.H. Shine from Harvard, or rather MIT, excuse me, and Bennis, okay, Warren Bennis. And what they posited was that people want to be able to show up as their authentic selves and not be punished, okay? And we've known this since the beginning of time. I want to be able to show up as my authentic self. Yes, I'll be vulnerable, but reward me for it. Don't punish me. Okay. In 1999, as it relates to psychological safety, Amy Edmondson at Harvard, right across the river from us in Northeastern, she evolved psychological safety to include psychological safety as a shared experience for members of a team. Okay. Really importantly. And she further extended it as not only does it need to be part of the team experience, but it's a responsibility for members of a team to create this for each other. So culture creation, per Amy Edmondson, is everybody's job. Okay. And then most recently, as we're looking at the literature and the scholarship related to psychological safety, in 2020, Dr. Tim Clark out in Utah, he publishes and he introduces what he refers to as the 4 stages of psychological safety. So how do we move organizations from theory to praxis as it relates to psychological safety? Okay. So just a little bit of background on psych safety, but I want to get back to the iceberg model here. So if we look at the base of the iceberg, where we get into our deeply held beliefs and our mental models, this is where our identity lives. This is where Maslow's idea of belonging exists. Do I feel as an individual that's part of a subunit, that's part of a subunit, an organization, do I feel as though I belong? Okay, it lives there. At the base of the iceberg is where psychological safety begins to emerge, okay? From there, it's manifest in our structures, right? And our structures, we're not just talking about brick and mortar. We could be talking about, policy. We're talking about culture, certainly. We're talking about mission, vision, and values. So is psychological safety baked into structure within a subunit in a micro level and organizationally wide when we start talking about the enterprise, okay? Then we get into patterns and trends. Is psychological safety lived out? Is it manifest? Is it part of the way the team lives, its values, its mission, and the vision? Okay, and this gets back to Project Aristotle at Google. When they looked at those 250 different attributes across 180 plus teams, the best teams represented psychological safety in everything that they did, okay, and all the patterns and trends within the organization. And then, of course, we get to the tip of the iceberg, which is the event itself, okay? And so we can measure, we can judge based on the way that just individual team members interact with each other, whether or not psych safety is alive and well. Slide, please, Gina. Okay, this is a good definition of psychological safety, all right? So essentially, with psychological safety, what we are speaking to here is that there's this shared belief, there's an understanding by members of a subunit, by members of an organization, right, enterprise level wide, that I can take risks, that I can show up as my authentic self, and I'm not going to get canceled for it, right? It comes back to that second key tenet of a high-performing team, right? The first being diversity of thought and lived experience. The second key tenet being inclusion, which is psychological safety. I can show up, I belong, I recognize that, I'm learning, I'm contributing, I'm challenging, and I'm not going to get punched in the face for it. I'm not going to get canceled. There's not going to be any negative recrimination or consequences, right? So psychological safety, everyone, is present when we see a manifest among members of the team through their one-on-one interactions, team behavior, patterns and trends over time, what Tim Clark refers to as a performance response. Okay, when a performance response has been invited from leadership to members of a team and among members of the team writ large, right? It's psychological safety is not just vertical, it's horizontal as well. Okay. So when a performance response has been elicited, the team member is identifying ways to add value to the team and in the team's pursuit of accomplishing its mission. Okay. Now, alternatively, when that invitation has not been made, and it starts with the leader because the leader has to model the way, when the invitation to perform has not been extended to members of the team, psychological safety is not present. And so what is elicited is what is referred to as the fear response. Okay. Again, this is per Tim Clark. And this is elicited among members of the team. And so if the performance response elicits a response of performance when there is a lack of psychological safety, and the fear response is evident among members of the team, it triggers not value to contribute, but actually survive. Okay. So just think about that. And I would ask, and I want to pause here for a moment, I want to solicit your input here. We have performance response when the invitation is show up as your authentic self, contribute. Fear response, which is no, I don't want your authenticity. I don't want you to contribute or challenge. And it elicits on the part of members of the team just a drive to survive. So I would ask, has anyone experienced this? And Lisa, maybe I could start with you. Have you experienced this? Have you been part of a team in your career? And I know you've been doing this for a while now, where you didn't feel safe showing up as your authentic self.
So I feel like I haven't felt it as much. That I think I've been in the same, position for, well, slightly different pieces of the same position, for 21 years with mostly the same boss, and so same leader. And so I think I felt that, safety that I can do that. I think about an email I sent to him the other night and was like, yeah, and you said, I think, one of the things you said was like questioning things, being, challenging, right? And so
Yeah.
it wasn't anything, I don't know, real significant, but there was a slide deck that we were putting together, and I was just like, no, like this isn't like this, these aren't, these aren't the best way to present it. This is what I'm saying to my boss. And he was like, okay. And he went back and reworked some things. And so I feel like we have but I also work a lot with our graduate students that are in the biomedical sciences. And I feel like I'm thinking about this both and I have 2 direct reports myself. So I'm thinking about my team and what I'm doing with them, but I'm also thinking about our students. And one of the things I was going to ask about was kind of like that power dynamic of that they have like kind of everything on the line, right? These are students, they're trying to get their master's or their PhDs. Some of them now, I work with a group of students, a lot of them are international. So I think they have, unfortunately, especially over the past 4 or 5 months, really have an issue with trying to come in as their real authentic self. That they feel like they need to hide some things. They feel like that if they say something in a group like lab meeting that they as a student that the faculty member that's the head of the lab will, I don't know, will put them down or not kind of accept it. Of course, that's what we're trying to do, especially the PhD students, is to get them to that independent point, to be that leader, to challenge things, to question things, to come up with their own questions and not just what their, leader says. So I'm kind of thinking about that and how this all can put into it. So I do a lot of career and professional development with our students and postdocs. So I'm kind of thinking of it just so from that lens as well of how can I help this culture be better,
Yeah.
and have our students and postdoctoral fellows really feel that psychological safety, which I don't think a lot of them do.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you for that. That was a really just a great ad. And just to respond to that, and for context, Lisa, so I was sharing with Gina as we were getting started before everyone joined. In the summer, I teach through the PhD network at Northeastern. I teach a course called Leaders, and it's an acronym, but it's all PhDs and postdocs. And so what you just shared by way of the lived experience of of some of the young folks that you're mentoring and coaching, I hear that routinely. And they're part of these labs, for example, and they do not feel safe. They do not feel safe. And the leader, who's supposed to be creating those conditions where everybody feels safe, and we'll get into the stages of psychological safety in a moment here, but just as a kind of a pre-read, the first stage of psychological safety is belonging. Okay. Like, it's safe to be me, right? The next stage is learning. Okay. You're going to learn. I want you to learn. It's okay to make mistakes along the way. Right. And then we migrate from learning to contributing. And then ultimately, where you are with your boss on your team, that last stage of the development of psychological safety is challenger safety. Right. But the problem is this: if the invitation has not been extended by leadership, and what we see more times than not, unfortunately, it's quite sad, is we have, regardless of the age or their area of expertise or the orientation mission of the subunit, but we have young people, old people showing up, and they don't feel safe to be authentic. And so again, everybody puts their head down, and it creates an environment where there's fear, right? I just want to survive. And that's the antithesis of what being a good team looks like. Lisa, will you accept that? Yeah.
Yes, totally spot on.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you. Katie, over to you. Anything to share?
I mean, I have a very, oh, my internet's a little spotty. Sorry if I freeze. I have a very, this resonates very much with an experience that I had on a team where I feel like the leaders did create a bad environment. And, a lot of people were really unhappy and were not able to, I think there was a group of us who tried to express our, our pushback or our issues with the way things were going, and it wasn't really something anyone in our leaders wanted to hear. And it was a bad environment. So yeah, I do have that experience, and I feel like, it's something that I take with me, and, going forward as I have my own teams and are part of new teams, it's something that I know I don't want to replicate
Yeah.
in that environment. So
Thank you. Yeah, great example. And we're going to get in. I'll touch upon a little bit of the neuroscience of psych safety, but as you're speaking, Katie, and quite honestly, using Lisa's example as well, when we see a team, whether we're part of it or we can look and we observe a team where psychological safety has not been entrenched, right? It's not a culture that elicits performance. You're seeing within the leader himself, herself, themselves. You're seeing a leader that does not have psychological safety within themselves. Okay, so before I can create psych safety for you and for the team, right? Speaking personally here, I need to feel safe myself. And unfortunately, if we have, and a lot of times, leaders that are leading some units, organizations, oftentimes we see manifest in them a lot of bad behaviors, right? And they're not creating the right conditions for the team to succeed. And that, I would tell you, oftentimes it is an inability or an unwillingness on their part to be vulnerable. Okay. As a leader, we all know, right? those of us assembled on the call, it takes courage. Courage catalyzes vulnerability, okay? Courage catalyzes vulnerability, but to say, look, I don't know. I don't have the answer, but you know what? We're going to figure this out together. Or Lisa's example of her boss sending out an email, hey, look, take a look at this deck for me. Lisa being able to come back to the boss and say, look, I don't know. Hey, boss, you know, we didn't get this part right, or you didn't get this part right. I want to offer this. So contributing, but also challenging, and the boss having the humility to respond in kind, saying, hey, thank you for that. You know what? We need to iterate. We can do better. And that's a perfect, beautiful example. But a lot of times, I've been part of organizations, and quite honestly, as a young man speaking personally here, I led an organization. You know, one of the incredible things speaking personally about the Army is that I come out of school, I go down, I go to, you know, the infantry officer basic course, ranger school. I show up, I'm 23 years old. Think about this. I show up in Germany and they're like, hey, congratulations, Lieutenant Manning. Here's your platoon. These 40 men are entrusted to your care. And I left, think about that, at 23, it's amazing, right? But I had been told by the Army, you are a professional officer. You know, you've got the right schooling, right experiences. But and for me, the way that I lived that out was I was unwilling to appear weak. I was unwilling to be vulnerable, and I really that was again manifest in my behavior and not being willing to admit I was wrong or asking for help, and it hurt the team. And thankfully, I had one of my junior leaders who had a lot more experience than I did. One of my non-commissioned officers, one of my sergeants said, hey, you know what, LT? We have your back, but you need to be willing to listen. And it's okay not to have the answer. I never forgot that. A lot of leaders never learned that. They never learned that. Okay, just for the sake of time, we need to push. And Eric, I'll work you in here, I promise. And please feel free to take yourself off of mute if you have something you want to share. Okay,
Not a
slide,
problem.
please.
Thanks, Mike.
Okay, these are the stages of psychological safety which I've spoken to. This is scholarship that Tim Clark is responsible for. Okay, so he evolved the great work that Amy Edmondson did beginning back in 1999, right, where she looked at psych safety in the life of the team. So what Tim has posited is here are the 4 stages of the development of psychological safety. So first and foremost, there's inclusion safety. I belong, right? Base of the iceberg. This is where psychological safety begins. I belong. I can be my authentic self. I'm not going to get canceled. Then there's learner safety. Okay. Can I grow? Right? It answers that question. Can I grow? And there's an exchange here. There's a social exchange. So I'm encouraged to learn in exchange for engagement to learn. So I encourage you to learn as the leader. And then on your part, you need to be engaged to learn. Okay. You're all in there. Then we get to contributor safety, right? It answers the question, can I create value? Can I create value? So in the social exchange, in this particular stage, we have autonomy and accountability in exchange for you're going to produce results. So as a leader, I'm going to give you space to run, okay, to contribute. But you have to be self-accountable. And oh, by the way, you got to perform for us, right? That's that performance response that we've spoken about. And then lastly, challenger safety, which responds to the question, can I be candid about change? And Lisa gave us a beautiful example here. Can I be candid about change, and can I challenge the status quo, right? And so in the social exchange here with this 4th and last stage of the development of psychological safety, I get air cover from the boss in exchange for my candor. Okay, really beautiful stuff here. Okay. Last comment on this particular slide, and then we'll pivot. Courage, everyone. I mentioned this a little bit earlier. Courage catalyzes vulnerability, which is critical in us showing up as our authentic selves. And I found in my own lived experience, if I've had to be courageous not physically courageous, but morally courageous, within myself to, hey, you know what, I got to be vulnerable here. Speaking, let's say, as a leader, I have to be courageous. I have to be vulnerable to model the way to invite others to do the same. And I just ask you to consider that relationship between courage and vulnerability as it relates to psychological safety. Slide, please. Okay, we've already gotten at a little bit of this already, and I think we've shared early on in our time together how psychological safety promotes this environment where I'm going to reward you for being authentic, I'm going to reward you for being vulnerable, and in turn, that's going to induce or elicit a performance response on the part of members of the team. Okay, the antithesis, of course, to all this. No psychological safety, there's psychological danger. I just want to survive. I'm just going to put my head down. And as many of the students I deal with, Lisa gave us an example of this. Gina, Katie, Eric, in your own lived experiences, you're dealing with people that just, they're putting their heads down. They just want to get by. Please, I want to get to the point where I could defend my terminal degree, and I just want to pass go. I'll do whatever I have to do. And what we're doing is we're modeling the wrong type of behavior, and we're doing them really a significant disservice there. Okay. Slide, please, Gina. Okay, so here are 6 ways to build psychological safety, and this comes directly, everyone, out of Project Aristotle, which was that Google study of 50 different attributes and upwards of 200 different teams. And this is what they've identified. Okay, these are 6 different and distinct ways for a leader and for the team to develop psychological safety. Okay, now what I'll share with you is that there's a framework that I learned in the military. It's called Mission Command. And what Mission Command is really, it encapsulates psychological safety, trust, but it's about empowerment. Okay. Now, different lecture, different conversation, the bases of power. Okay. But French and Raven's bases of power, it's a taxonomy dating back to the 50s, where we've got 5 bases of power. There's been an evolution, and there's one of my heroes is a woman, works out at the University of San Diego. Her name is Afsana Nahavandi. She's an Iranian American. And what she has introduced is that there's actually a 6th base of power, and that is empowerment itself. Okay? A 6th base of power, empowerment itself. And so as a leadership style or orientation, a leader that is empowering others, they deliberately give away authority and the commensurate level of responsibility. Now, in order to do this, psychological safety has to be in place. Okay, the team is grounded and anchored in psychological safety. There's trust among members of the team, so horizontally, but also vertically, between the leader and the led. Okay, but the leader is giving away that authority, pushing it down to the lowest levels as appropriate, as well as responsibility. And we refer to this as Mission Command, but I would share with you, and I challenge you to just think through this. How can I do this on my own lived experience? Okay, whether it's working at Northeastern University. Eric, I'm not sure where you're currently working right now. And then Lisa, I think you said Thomas Jefferson. So in our own lived experiences and our own capacities, how can we embrace an empowering leadership style, an empowering base of power to give away authority and responsibility, right? That in itself is an act of vulnerability. Okay, it takes courage to do this, but that's how we lift our people up. Okay, that is how we lift our people up. And in the Army, in the military, we refer to this as Mission Command. Okay, and Mission Command associated with that is what we call intelligent disobedience. Okay, when a team, and quite honestly, this is, I think, the final measure of whether or not a team is a high-performing team, where there's such a high level of psychological safety and trust that members of the team, based on emergence, okay, in the system, will elect to, because they know the boss has their back. I may disobey a particular, hey, this is the protocol or this is the process that we're using, but I'm going to make, based on what I'm seeing in the system, I know the boss has my back and trust me, I'm going to make a decision in time and space. We call that intelligent disobedience. And when that is part of the patterns and trends and behaviors of the team, you know you've arrived. Okay, you know you've arrived. Okay, slide please. All right, team, in our remaining time together, I want to pivot to the back door, which is accountability, right? So this is just a rough, excuse me, definition of accountability, which is essentially, you know what, I'm answerable for something, okay? I am answerable for something. I will be held accountable for. I'm going to have to be, I could be called to the mat for something I did or something that I failed to do. Okay, so just use this as a kind of a working definition as we pivot to the remaining time together here. Slide, please. Okay, this is a great slide. Okay, this is a great slide. And I want to just spend a few moments on this particular slide, everyone. So here we see the relationship between psychological safety and accountability. And this is care of Amy Edmondson, who's one of my heroes. Okay, so we've already defined psychological safety. But here, and I would ask you to consider this, and I have in my own lived experience, I'll share with you, and they're not here on this call to defend themselves, but my cohort, so my full-time job at Northeastern, I work at the Gordon Institute of Engineering Leadership, and I have this magnificent cohort year in and year out of these brilliant engineers, young engineers that are matriculating through our program over the course of the better part of a year, 11 months. And there's always tension. And this year in particular, there was tension where we had created and absolutely maximized psychological safety, just beautifully. And so our students felt safe. They recognized that they could show up as their authentic selves. But where we were living, where they were living in the beginning of our time together, too often than not, or more often than not, excuse me, was in that comfort zone, okay? Comfort zone. Bottom line is with leadership, I want you to get comfortable being uncomfortable. And so where we need to pivot, and this is where accountability comes in, okay? And having the articulation of the right performance measures is in that top right quadrant, the learning zone, everyone. Accountability gets us there. If we don't have accountability, self-accountability, team accountability, organizational accountability. So that is a core value. It's part of who we are. If we don't have that, we're going to live in that comfort zone and we're never going to evolve to where we need to be. Okay. So we need to get uncomfortable. We have to get comfortable being uncomfortable. You can't stop with being collegial, right? You need to get to that space where, Lisa, you gave us a great example, so please forgive me for coming back to it again. But being able to say, hey, boss, you know what? No, this is subpar. Those are Manning's words, not yours. We can do better. We need to do better. Here are my thoughts. Okay. So I want to just posit that here for everybody. What do you need to do? Is your, in time and space now, your team, which zone are you in right now? Okay. And I want to challenge you to think through that. Slide, please. Okay. So the leader's role, everyone, in accountability, okay, is that we need to build relationships and exchanges with our people that are communal based. And what this means is that we are responding to our people's needs without anticipating or expecting something in return. Okay? Something in return. So it's a communal based relationship. When we have an exchange based relationship or one that's more transactional, it's that I'm going to give you I'll do this for you, but I expect something in return. And the bottom line is, it comes back to empowerment, okay? And this is how we can really engender and inculcate this spirit of accountability within our people, within ourselves, within the team. And that's when we have these communal-based relationships where it's, look, I want to empower you to the point where you've got authority at your level as appropriate and responsibility, okay? But baked into that is there's accountability for you to do the work at your level, okay? And I'm going to push that down to you. And what I'm asking in return is that I have your back. Just be the best version of yourself, okay? I'm not asking for anything else above and beyond that, okay? I'm not asking for allegiance. I'm asking you to organize yourself around subunit values, mission, and vision, okay? And when we can do that, when we can deviate away from a control-oriented, right, or directing leadership style, what it does is it creates high levels of trust. And again, it clears the space for our people just to run, okay, and perform. Slide, please. Okay. There's a great book out there that's called The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. If you haven't heard this, I want to encourage you to look at this. And this is, the author is Pat Lencioni. It's been around for a couple decades. It's an awesome book. He's an absolutely brilliant storyteller. So in this book, he uses a fictional team challenge that he had it was informed by his own lived experience as a consultant, but he takes us through the stages of team development. And then as the team is going through Tuckman stages of team development, they're navigating through these different challenges and dysfunctions. But the fourth dysfunction is avoidance of accountability. And the bottom line is what Pat Lencioni shares with us is the way that we can really bridge that gap and get comfortable having uncomfortable conversations is we need at the lowest level, local level, that's where there needs to be accountability. And it's manifest in members of the team having uncomfortable conversations with each other. And that becomes part of the fabric of the climate, but also the culture. It is a culture of accountability. And because our people are empowered, they're holding self-accountability, but they hold each other accountable. And so we get over that uncomfortability by having uncomfortable conversations, forcing ourselves to do that. Okay. Hey, this is what I heard. You may not have meant that, but that's how that landed within me. Okay. Slide, please. Okay, this is the last slide of substance that I'm going to speak to, and then we'll close, and then I'll pause for any comments that you may have here. So this is these are called the Bregman fives. Okay, and I love this. So Bregman articulates these are 5 key elements. These are steps, focus areas that a leader can focus on. Okay. Plus a 6, which is the challenge commitment. So for Bregman, we got to start with clear expectations, right? So you got to clearly communicate the desired outcome as a leader, okay? And how success will be measured. What's the approach that I'm asking you, encouraging you to take to get there? Next, we get into clear capability. You got to identify, it's a little bit of situational leadership here. Identify the necessary skills and resources that your people are going to need to meet the expectations. And then associated with that, what are the gaps? Okay. What are the capability gaps? As leaders, we owe that to our people. Okay. Next is clear measurement. So we establish clear, measurable milestones. Okay. And what are the objective targets along the way? Okay. So what are the measures of effectiveness? What are the measures of performance? Okay. And then we have to track. The best teams hold themselves accountable, and you have to measure success and failure. Okay. Clear feedback. Feedback that is horizontal, right? Getting back to Lencioni, where peer peers are holding each other accountable, but there's vertical accountability as well and feedback. I'm giving feedback as a leader, but I'm also open to, and I fight for feedback from my people as well. Okay. Provide honest, open, and ongoing feedback, so our people know how and where they can improve. Then we've got clear consequences, everybody. So based on the four focus areas above, we determine whether to repeat the approach, to reward, or in some cases consequence or release the individuals. Okay. If we've done everything that we can, right, we then need to self-assess and then assess the team member and to find out, am I going to repeat that? Can I rehabilitate, or do they need to be given an opportunity to do something else? And then lastly, and this is challenge commitment. Okay. And this is, again, a sixth focus area above and beyond the Bregman 5, where we want to be able to challenge each other. Right. Okay. Slide, please. All right, team, I'm going to wrap here. I know we're coming up at time, so thanks for your thank you for the grace of just another minute or two here, and then I'll yield the floor to you all. I just want to illuminate that kind of third bullet on the slide there. Just remember, with psychological safety, if it's the front door, and it is, right, that's the invitation. Please come on in. You belong. Learn, contribute, challenge. But you can't stop there. Okay, commensurate with the psychological safety is the accountability. It's the back door. If we don't have those two lines working together in tandem, you're going to live in the comfort zone where people show up and where everybody, hey, I feel great being part of this team, but we're not challenging each other. We're not growing. We're not learning. And with that, Gina, if you don't mind, we can take those down. And then I'll yield the floor to you all. I know we're at time here, but if you've got just a few more moments, I would love your feedback, maybe just by way of a quick checkout. If you could just share maybe what's the one key takeaway, something that you heard from here that you're taking with you that maybe will improve how you perform and how the team performs. And Eric, if you don't mind, maybe we could start with you. What's your one key takeaway?
Yeah, thanks again, Mike, for the presentation. Very, very informative stuff here. In my experience, I've worked on teams where both sides of the spectrum were felt, where I was on a team where that psychological safety aspect was not present and everybody was walking on eggshells type of environment. And then I've been in a team where the management made and the leadership made everyone feel very comfortable being themselves, and opened it up, and it really kind of helped, I want to say, reset what I felt in terms of my career, in terms of what I was looking for on teams that I was going to be part of moving forward. And actually right now I'm actually moving forward into a new challenge. So I'm trying to find a team that has that same level of comfort that will make me feel welcome. So I do appreciate the content here, and thanks again. Yeah, very great.
Yeah, Eric, thank you. Thank you. And
Yep.
please, if we can be of any assistance to you in this next phase, please feel free to reach out.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Of course. Let's go with Katie. Your thoughts, just by way of checking out. What did you hear? What didn't you like? What'd you like? What are you taking with you?
Yeah, I made some notes about the 6 ways to build psychological safety. I think as leaders, like, it's really important to build a team that has an openness to it. I think and the ability to accept everyone's feedback and communications, and yeah, so I think this is really helpful. It was really nice to meet you, Mike, and listen to your talk. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. Thank you for your thoughts and kind words. Lisa, over to you.
Yeah, so I'm kind of going off of that, those 6 ways to build it. One of the things that were done was that human to human, and I do kind of wonder how in teams where some of us are virtual or remote more of the time, how do we get that, especially even like human to human, and how is that maybe how that has been different, over the past 5 years, where so many more of our teams are virtual versus that real. Yeah, you're human to human, but yet you're not, you're not seeing you aren't seeing the whole person. And so just kind of wondering how to maybe do that better, as well as just, in my head, thinking about my students and postdocs where it's some of the things of these things you can teach them, but it's also in that case, the faculty members, like you said, who maybe haven't thought about this, who haven't, um, thought about how to make this sort of open and vulnerable and authentic culture within their labs and other places. And I'm not sure in my role how I can do that, or how I, to work with other people at my university to kind of help with that. So lots for me to think.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. And Lisa, I offer up, if you want, happy to jump on a call to talk through that. That's, something that we've also considered. And what I'll share with you, just if I may, quickly in response to that, is that I think as leaders, and especially we all lived this through COVID, right? And then when you've got distributed leadership where you have teams that are very disaggregated, for example, and whether it's within the university system or again, when I think about my previous vocation as a soldier, we had subunits all over the place. And so it's hard when you're not sharing the same air with people, right? And you're not, encountering them very intimately, in the same physical space. It's hard to create that psychological safety and trust. So what I would share with you, one of the things that we've kind of through trial and error was identifying times where, whether it was virtual or in person, where we could come together and commune with each other, get to know each other, like adjacent to work.
Yeah.
So, right. So if I've got a battle rhythm event, I know I'm going to be, touch a base. We've got these meetings that are already templated, but just coming together, whether it's a virtual happy hour or let's schedule a one-on-one. I want to get to know you as a person, and then modeling that vulnerability. That's how you start to break down barriers.
Great. That's helpful. Thank you. And we actually are under my dean, we actually had and actually it wasn't the dean that initiated, it was two other colleagues. One of our colleagues is pregnant. And so we had a baby shower just last week where we all did come together, and we all hadn't been in that, like our conference room, all of us together. And it may be 5 years. So it was,
Wow.
we've seen each of each other. We're in at all different times. Couple people are mostly fully remote, but yeah, so it was nice to have that, and hopefully that was really helpful for us too.
Yeah, that's great. Another beautiful example. Thank you. Gina, over to you. Check out.
So I think first of all, I agree with what everyone has shared. And I think one of the things I feel I learned so much, just from this, our presentation. One thing that really jumped out at me, in thinking about, thankfully, my one experience with, being on a team where there wasn't a ton of psychological safety, is what you shared about the leader of that team and their own psychological safety, and then how that impacts their leadership of the team. And when you shared that, I thought to myself, wow, that it's almost like a click, and it just made so much sense. And I think it really impresses the importance on myself as a leader and where I'm at with my own psychological safety, and then how that floats down to the team. And so, like I mentioned, just so much was really helpful and useful today. And that's one thing that wasn't immediately evident, that when you shared it, I was like, oh yes, that makes so much sense.
Yeah, that's awesome. And just I'll close out if I may on my end, and I'll yield the floor back to you, Gina. But just in response to that, what I just want to kind of amplify home is that vulnerability is not weakness. Actually, vulnerability is strength. It's we have to reframe how we think about vulnerability. It's not a weakness to say I need help, right? Frankly, it's a strength, and you need courage to say that in some environments, right? And when the example I use, what you were just speaking to, Gina, it's sad when you have leaders that just they do not feel safe within themselves, right? Psychologically, emotionally, or otherwise, and they can't create it for anyone else. and it creates an environment where people are just, they feel fearful and they just want to survive. So we just have to, as at our own level, whether you're leading an organization, right, or a subunit or not, we can create psychological safety to the best of our ability within ourselves and then extend it to other people, right? Which is beautiful. So you can be a change agent. Tim Clark says it's really beautiful. He said, enterprise level, if there's psychological safety, it's industrial strength love. Think about that. It's industrial strength love. That's pretty powerful stuff.
Mhm.
So yeah. So with that, thank you for the opportunity to spend some time with everyone today. Thanks for sticking with us here. I know we went over, and Gina, thanks for the invitation.
Yeah, Colonel Mike, thank you. It's always a pleasure. What I wanted to share in my opening remarks too is that Colonel Mike is one of my favorite colleagues, and hopefully everyone enjoyed the presentation today. And Colonel Mike, thanks again for your time today and the work that you put into this session, and also for the offer to follow up with folks afterwards. We will be sending out the slides and the recording to folks afterwards, so I hope you enjoy viewing them. Like I mentioned, we have other pre-recorded content on our YouTube, so there's the link there in the chat. And then we've got a ton of other events coming up, both in person and virtual, so I hope you'll take a moment to check out our events page, which is also linked there in the chat. With that, again, our thanks, and that'll do it for us for the spring session of Husky How To. We'll be working on some fall series for you, so keep an eye out for that. And thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Gina. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you,
very much.
everyone.
Have a
Take
great
care.
day.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
God bless.